Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravey, a website designer and business coach for entrepreneurs and your host for the Breakthrough Brand podcast, the show that's all about pulling back the curtain on how to actually build a successful business. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want a deep dive into the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to run a successful business and stand out in a crowd, you're in the right place. After creating a multiple six-figure-a-year website design business in my 20s, I'm ready to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning because I believe the keys to building a thriving business should never be a secret. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee, and a fresh, honest take on the reality of being an entrepreneur. If you're ready to master online marketing, branding, website design, mindset, and business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Breakthrough Brand podcast. So when I surveyed you guys about what you want more of from me on the podcast in this new year, a resounding answer was that you wanted to hear more about investing, finances, and real estate content specifically. Now, not turning this into a real estate podcast, do not worry. But I do like to talk about as entrepreneurs, like when you're making money in your business, what do you do with it? Besides spending it on your lifestyle, like what are other ways we can use that money to further our lives, further our wealth, and all that sort of things? And real estate is that for us. So whether or not you have real estate properties right now, I'd say this episode is for you. So if you're listening right now and you're like, Elizabeth, I don't have any properties, or like that can't be for me, I'd really encourage you to consider listening anyway, because you might just hear how this could be for you and how this could be a good investment possibility for you. And I'd say especially listen if you're someone who's like, that is a goal of mine, or this is a side business I'm interested in pursuing this year. So I have brought back on my amazing husband, Adam, who I just love podcasting with every time we do these episodes together, which hasn't been that many, but every time we do, I'm always like, I love just talking to him in general, but I also love talking to him when we're recording. You guys get to hear it. So he's back on the show though, and we're chatting all things real estate on this episode and on the next episode of the Breakthrough Brand podcast. So be sure to come back next week because we're going to go even deeper on some of this stuff then. So we have 5 investment properties to go and tell you a little bit before we get into the interview. We have 5 investment properties, which is what you're going to hear us talk about. And in this episode, we are breaking down the exact numbers, exact numbers on 3 of the properties that we had all of 2022. And by exact numbers, I really mean it. We are sharing the exact numbers, how much we put down on each property, how much each one made in an entire year, and the return on the investment on each of those properties. And I know you guys really appreciate honest, real numbers. I know I do as well. Just like hearing, okay, like we know you have that, but like, how is it really doing, right? So that's what we're doing here. We are sharing the totally real numbers openly with you guys. We joke that this should have been like a shareholders meeting for us because that's how it feels a little bit, and you guys are getting to sit in on it. So we also talk about macroeconomics. We talk about marriage and working together in marriage, which and our philosophies on that and how we're kind of doing that in this business, even though we both have other lines of work that the other person's not involved in. If you want some like kind of working with your spouse advice, I think you're really going to like that part. And we also talk about the housing market right now. And as well as at the very end, Adam gives some really just like dynamite advice for if you're thinking about investing in real estate, but maybe feeling a little bit held back. I really think you're going to love that part again at the very end. If you've been like on the fence about it and just struggling to take action, I know a lot of people are in that boat where for years you're like, oh, I'm interested in that, but then we don't get moving on it. So I think you're really going to enjoy this part. And again, if you're thinking about skipping this one because you don't think this is possible for you, I just really want to say, if you told me 10 years ago that I would own 5 investment properties, I don't think I would have believed you, honestly, even though I do believe in myself and believe in my business and all of that kind of stuff. I don't know if I would have believed that that was something I would have done. And the truth is, it's easier to get into this like line of work in this type of business than you might think. And I'm all about on this podcast educating on building a successful business and the beauty of owning a successful, profitable business, like we talk about on this podcast week over week, is being able to start other profitable businesses, right? Which is exactly what Adam and I have done with this real estate business. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Adam. I hope you guys enjoy. All right. Welcome back. A warm welcome back to the Breakthrough Brand podcast. I'm sitting here with my wonderful husband, Adam, who it's really fun. Yes. Hi. So this is the first episode I'm recording in the new year in 2023. And it feels really special that you're my first guest of the year and my first episode in general of the year.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That is cool. Glad to help ring in the new year.
Yes. So, guys, this is going to be a fun episode. Last time we talked real estate was back on episodes 135, 136, and 137, which was a long time ago if you look at the number of this episode. And that was also a lot different in our own lives. That was when we recorded those when I was pregnant with Colin, which was a long time ago now.
A literal lifetime ago. For Colin. Literally, his lifetime.
Yeah, and then they aired, actually, I think one of them aired like on the day he was born or something like that, like the first in those series.
Wow.
And now Colin is 16 months old. So this is like 16 months later, could say, on those 3 episodes. And our life has changed a lot. Our real estate business has changed a lot. And basically in this first episode, we're going to do probably 2 or 3 together. We know 2 at least. But in this first one, all we want to do, I think you guys are going to be super interested in, is just update you. So last time we talked, we had 2 properties. We'd had a while longer than the other. One of them was more new. And we've learned a lot since then, which is what we're going to do our next episode on, of like what we've learned since then. But in this one, we just want to share like really openly some of the numbers on the properties, what it's been like, and kind of how the business has grown, you could say. So yeah, that's it. So first, where do you want to start, Adam?
Well, first, did you just said when we recorded last time we had 2 properties. Did we not have
2.
Did we not have 3 at that point?
We might have had 3.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah, we can start just going through the properties. So I know we're not really doing video, but if we use this clip, these are all the notes, literally on paper, because that's how I work.
He didn't have a laptop for a long time.
That's right. But this, as I'm looking at the notes that we're about to go through, this literally feels like a incredibly open book, like company meeting, which also makes me think that we should probably be spending like $1 million as a tax deduction right now and calling this our annual meeting, but we're not.
Yeah, that's something, just a random quick tip that we don't do a good job of. When you have a real estate business like this, that's a family business, which is such a good family business. I have a lot of thoughts on that we could talk about. And we want to eventually, as Colin gets older, get him involved. But you can have annual meetings and go out to a nice dinner and treat yourself on the business credit card, which we never do.
Call it that annual meeting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason I say that is because it feels like this is about to be literally so open book that it should be considered like a shareholders meeting. But anyway, okay. So so we had 3 properties, I think, the last time that we did a podcast. And just to give you the history, all 3 of those were purchased in early 2021. I think it was literally like January, March, June, or May, probably, like first half of 2021. And all 3 of those properties have now been up and running for, anywhere from a year and a half to closer to 2 years. I mean, the longest one, I think, had a tenant move in February of 2021, so it's coming up on the 2-year anniversary. And then the last one of that first stretch of 3 will hit its 2-year anniversary this summer, so more like 18 months operating right now. So what's cool about that is we have, for the first time, complete numbers for what a year looks like when those 3 properties are all just doing their thing. Like, all of them had a normal operating year in 2022, so we can actually start to look at numbers, because in the first year that you start a rental property, as you would imagine, really hard to get numbers on how much money it's making, because it's not even operating for the whole year. Like, there's months before you even purchased it where it obviously is making no money. There's lots of startup costs. I mean, there's the whole closing situation, the down payment, the closing costs. And then just little random things that have to be fixed when you first buy it. You're going to have to pay for the utilities for a few weeks before you get a tenant in there. Just all this kind of random stuff. A fee to transfer the HOA into your name. So, point is, there's not the data set there to provide good information. But now on 3 of them, we have all of 2022 and we have good information.
Before you share the numbers, let's also talk about the 2 later properties real quick. And
okay.
Let's get into the number on these. Just that to fully bring in the properties.
Right. So while these 3 properties were having a full normal year in 2022, we also started 2 more properties.
In 2022.
In 2022. So that's what happened in 2022. The first 3 all had their first full normal year in 2022. And in 2022, we started 2 new ones to put it at a total of 5. One of those was the house that we used to live in. Like, we bought a new primary residence, but instead of selling our old one, we kept it. We used it as a rental property, which there's a lot to say about that. We can even maybe talk about that in one of these next couple of episodes. And then we bought a 5th property, which there's a lot of uniqueness there too. We bought it out of state. So it's in Huntsville, Alabama. So that's also a new thing. We hadn't bought outside of Middle Tennessee before doing that, but now we have a property in a different state. So
yeah, and with that so we have 5 properties. Of that, 3 of them, I don't think we ever shared actually where they're located. I guess we can though. 3 of them, hang on. Yes, 3 of them are in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which if you're from Middle Tennessee, Murfreesboro is an awesome place.
It is such a great
one
town.
of the it's outside of Nashville, but it's truly its own separate thing. It's not like a suburb type community. So we have that, and then our old house is actually literally in Nashville, and then now it's one in Huntsville.
Yeah, Murfreesboro is great. I don't think you were ever really with me on this, but I briefly entertained wanting to live in Murfreesboro.
Yes,
I think it's a great town.
Yes, Murfreesboro is great.
Awesome place. Okay, here we go. So property A, we're not going to use the addresses, for the privacy of the people who live there and all that kind of stuff. But we'll call it properties A, B, and C is what we're going to talk about right now because they all just had a full normal year. Property A, I'm going to give you what the anticipated picture was and then what the actual picture was. I'm going to do that for all 3. So property A should make $9,144 a year in free-flowing profit. And that's me just taking what it rents for every month and subtracting out the mortgage, property taxes, the insurance, the HOA. Note that I don't have capital expense in that figure, which we'll just kind of bookmark that and come back to that.
Yeah, Adam's going to explain all that if you're wondering what that is.
Yeah, we're gonna put that in the next episode. So that's what on paper, when you're just looking at the numbers, what you should be predicting, you should be looking at just over $9,144 a year. If you took whatever that profit margin is every month and multiplied it by 12, that's how much money you would be expecting, which would compute to a cash-on-cash return annually of 16.5%. And let me tell you a little bit about that. So cash-on-cash is a very, very simple, it's not the only one, but it's a very simple but very important metric for how you calculate how much money you're making from a rental property. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It is cash-on-cash, which is referring to the actual literal free-flowing cash in your bank account that you made off of the property divided against, to create a percentage, the cash that you had to invest as your initial investment to start the rental property, which is predominantly your down payment and closing cost, but it would also include any renovation or rehab costs that you have to pay upfront. All of that creates your initial investment. Then you've got the money that you actually made in real profit that year in your bank account. You're taking that number, the profit number, you're dividing it by the initial investment number. That's giving you a percentage. That's telling you the percentage of cash-on-cash return.
Which, real quick to interrupt you, for someone listening who's like, okay, I want to learn to calculate that. How did you learn to calculate that? Where did you find that? Just for someone wanting to learn that.
Yeah, I definitely read that in a book from Bigger Pockets, which is their initial, I think, kind of their flagship first book to read if you're just getting started. I think it's called How to Invest in Real Estate. We probably shared it on the last time.
We can link to it in the notes.
Yes, we should do that again. And that's not the only way to calculate how much money you're making in real estate, but it's a good, simple one to know and to start with. So in this case, I said it would be, in theory, 16.5%, right? So it's $9,144 is what the numbers are telling us we should make each year. The initial investment was $55,346. That's predominantly, this one did not really need any kind of rehab or renovation. It was basically rent ready. So that's basically just the down payment and the closing cost. So you're taking that $9,000, you're dividing it by the $55,000. That is equaling your cash on cash return, 16.5. Which would be great. I mean, if you're familiar with the world of investing at all, 16.5% sounds pretty good. The U.S. stock market, over its entire lifetime, depending on how you calculate it, there are various ways to calculate, and people debate on that, but everybody lands between 7 and 9%. That's what it's averaged over its 100-plus history. Okay, we're talking about 16.5%. That's better. Now, let me be really clear. I want to be honest. We'll talk about this in just a second. This particular rental property had a really good year. Property A had a good year. Also, I don't have capital expense in here, which is a real thing that we'll talk about in the next episode, and that should definitely knock off some of this. But still, let's take it down to 11% or 12%. that still sounds really good. And of course, this is before you've talked about any kind of appreciation or loan repayment or any of the other various ways to make money in real estate. So, little sales pitch for why, after doing this for a couple of years, I still think it makes a lot of sense. Anything to say or share or ask before I move on?
Clarify again. I don't know that you said it very clearly. How much like cash in the door is how I like to phrase it. I know you use different terms, but did that property A make in 2022?
Yeah, we haven't gotten there.
Okay.
Sorry. That's why it didn't make sense. I only taled about the projections.
Okay, so the projection, let's share the projection again, and let's share the actual number.
The projection was 9,144, and that's
so
me just...
you're projecting like basically exactly.
Yes, okay.
You got exact. That's why I thought you already shared it.
The actual number was $9,027, so it was off by a little over $100, which is awesome. That basically means that reality ended up being exactly what the projection was, which is amazing. It won't always be like that. Okay, that property had a great year. There weren't any repairs really. I mean, we're missing about $100 here. That was probably to like buy some air filters at some
Which
point.
Let's also share a little something else about this property. First of all, a lot of our properties are townhomes, which is something we're going to talk about in the next episode too, of like things we wish we knew when we started all of this. But this one is totally beautiful. Like when we bought it, it was very like well updated, which doesn't mean it won't need repairs and things like that, but it was like move-in ready, really well taken care of, and all of those kind of factors, which helps too.
Right, which won't always be true. Like it over time is going to need remodels and new appliances and all that kind of stuff. Hence why this 16.5% return is not actually all free-flowing profit. And we'll talk more about that in the next episode. But still, a lot of it is. So feel great about that one. That was a great year. Basically made $9,000. That's what we thought it would make. It's a 16.5% return. That's fantastic. That was property A. To illustrate how capital expense works and how not all of that profit is actually free-flowing, we have property B. It can illustrate that point really well. So this one, the projected number that it should have made, again, just taking what it rents for, subtracting out the mortgage, subtracting out the interest, subtracting out property taxes, insurance, HOA, although this one does not have an HOA, but just all those kinds of things. It should have made $7,116 for the whole year. In which, okay, I'll tell you what that would be in theory for a return. That would be a 13.9% cash-on-cash return because the initial investment was $50,864. So $7,116 divided by $50,864 would give you 13.9%. Sounds pretty great. Well, its actual profit that it made was $902. So that's terrible. It was supposed to make $7,000 and it made slightly less than $1,000. Literally $902 of free-flowing cash.
And why did that happen?
Man, because the HVAC went out.
Which HVAC share, that was about $6,000, right? Is that what we said?
Yep. So that's the heating and air unit on the house.
Which a nice little thing here too, though. Whenever we did, help me if I remember this incorrectly, whenever we bought the new HVAC, we used a credit card.
Yeah.
Didn't we? Yeah, so we used our business credit card, which I'll link in the show notes to this, but I'm a huge fan of the Spark cashback card by Capital One. If you've bought Profit Sheet or if you're a book.designer, you've heard me talk about this card. I have one for my own business and we have one separately for the real estate business. We have so much rewards between all these cards because of being able to put those types of really big expenses and all the little expenses on credit cards.
Yes. So there are fringe benefits. There is that when you have to spend a ton of money, you can make a little bit of money in credit card rewards. There's other good things too, okay? That's a tax deduction. Like that is now money that we had to spend for this business to operate, and that gets deducted against our taxable income, which is good. There's other things too that are, and this gets into what's kind of nice about real estate. That was a huge expense, right? Basically blew up property B's whole financial year. Took it from what should have been a nice return to basically no return. Well, here's the pro. You still have an HVAC. Like, that money's not gone.
This shouldn't need to be replaced now for a while.
Correct. And that adds value to the home. That, to Elizabeth's point she just made, buying that now is something you're not going to have to buy for the next decade, hopefully.
And if you've ever purchased a home, you know that, like, when you're looking at buying, like, so think about the resale of this, like, we look at, like, how old is the HVAC, how old is the roof, those sorts of things really change the home value, because then you're seeing as, like, okay, well, I'm going to have to quickly replace that, or it might go out and all that kind of stuff.
Right, but this is one of the things that I actually think is awesome about real estate. Of most of the time, There's rare exceptions, but most of the time, when you're spending money and you have these expenses that make your numbers look worse, the thing you bought is still yours and you still have value in it, which is fantastic. And I mean, this is obviously true when you make your mortgage payment. I mean, the biggest expense in any real estate business is the debt service, paying your mortgage. And guess what? You're actually making money then too. Not all of it. You're paying some interest for sure, but you're also paying some principal and owning more of that profit. So you make your mortgage payment. Oh, that's a bummer. We just lost a bunch of money. But some of that's actually still your money. You paid down the loan. Same with this HVAC. Oh, that's a bummer. We just bought an HVAC. Makes the profit look worse. Okay, but you still own that HVAC. Like, it's not worth the same $6,000 it was the day you bought it, but it's still worth $5,000. Like, all that money didn't go away. Nonetheless, I'm not trying to overly sugarcoat it. That sucks. Property B basically made no money last year. And again, we'll say more about that in the next episode when we talk about capital expense. But it's just bad luck. I had a big picture repair, replacement, renovation item that hit in the second year of the property and blew up the numbers. Anything else to say about that one before we keep going?
No, yeah, let's do the third, and then we can kind of summarize the whole situation overall for you guys of like what the total was and like what that means and what it looked like to make that money.
Right.
If you're listening to this episode and feeling like, Elizabeth, I love this. I love the idea of real estate investing, but I need to make more money in my business first before I can jump into something like this, then you need to hear about my course, Booked Out Designer. Booked Out Designer is my course and coaching program all about how to build an in-demand business as a brand and website designer on your terms. This course is packed full of value. If you like my podcast and you learn a lot here, just trust me, you will learn even more in Booked Out Designer. I'm like pouring it all out. Everything I know about running a successful business in that course. It has things that help you change your business and grow your business, whether you're just getting started or if you've like been at it a while, but you haven't quite nailed down the business side of things yet. So we cover things like pricing to make a profit, running a client project from start to finish, discovery calls and booking clients, changes to your website, marketing to clients and marketing strategy in general. And you even get to see real meetings with me and my clients to show you examples of how everything works together. Plus, there are tons of templates you can swipe and plug straight into your business and start using today to save you tons of time and tons of money. And there's even a complete legal contract that you can use with your clients for brand and website design projects. Again, completely ready to go, attorney drafted legal template right there for you, all included in the cost of the course. So it's all here and waiting for you inside Booked Out Designer. I would love to welcome you into our community. Go to elizabethmccravy.com/BOD, short for Booked Out Designer, to get all the information and join today. The doors are open and I'd love to welcome you inside. All right, back to my conversation with Adam. Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed, so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravy.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravy.com/CHM. Now back to the episode.
Property C is much more similar to property A than property B. So it pretty much penciled out to what you would expect. So it should have made $7,464 a year. And it made, well, and that would be a 12.8% return because the initial investment was $58,321. So you take your $7,400, you divide it by your $58,000, it's going to give you 12.8%. In reality, it made $6,750. So that's about $700 off from what was projected. And the reason is because we bought a refrigerator. So an HVAC didn't go out, a refrigerator went out, which is a lot cheaper, and that's great. But that's your $700. Spent $700 in a refrigerator. That's why the reality number is off from the projection number by $700. So you had just under $7,000 in profit from that property, which made its actual return, cash on cash return, like we talked about that calculation, 11.6% was the reality return. Mm-hmm. That make sense? Was that all clear?
Yeah. So, okay, what was the total then between these three properties that we had a whole year on?
Okay, so
the total rounded. Well, I'm forgetting what it was now from what the first one was and all that.
Yeah, so when you take all three properties, two that basically performed like you would hope, one that this was the year where you paid a lot of that big picture expense all at once. When you take all three of them together, it is $16,679 of profit. That's how much actual, real, new profit money is sitting in the bank account from those three properties that we didn't have before, and that is truly, free flowing profit.
10% return on that investment.
Right. So the initial investment across all three was $164,000. So when you divide basically $17,000 by, which was the profit, by the initial investment of $164,000, you get a 10.1% return, which is just the cash on cash, which I feel pretty great about. I mean, a 10.1% return sounds pretty good to me when you have an HVAC purchase in there. Honestly, a 10.1% return sounds good no matter what. That's just a good return. Spoiler alert, that's a lot better than what the stock market did during that year. So that's a great return. It's honestly a return that gets me very excited when I realize, and oh my God, that was after a $6,000 HVAC purchase. This is fantastic.
Yeah, so with that too, this is something Adam and I were talking about before we started recording. So basically this business made, and I use non-real terms a lot with this sort of stuff, but the cash that was paid to us, not including the other ways you're making money in real estate, which there are so many, but was basically $17,000, which is a really great part-time salary, you could say, which is awesome.
It's a nice part-time job.
Yes. And when we were talking about that, I was saying to Adam that it's a nice part-time job that actually is work. I think so often people think of real estate investing as truly just sitting around and you get checks in the mail and that's it. And that can be a little more true if you have a property manager handling everything,
that's right.
Which then you're going to cut that return a lot by having a property manager because those tend to be expensive. But Adam was doing work on this consistently, especially when it comes to things like tenant turnover, all the different repairs that happened, collecting rent from people. And there's a lot of different things, and you've streamlined a lot of the business in the past year even. But a lot of it, you said too, is mental load more than actual hours spent on the business, of carrying the okay, I got to figure this out, I got to do this thing and all that. Yeah,
I would agree with that. So yes, it is work, absolutely. And I knew that before we ever started doing it. But now after actually having lived it, yes, we know that of while we are saying how real estate's so great and it's so much better than stocks and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, but the nice thing about a stock market is, you don't do anything. You just buy the share and you're done. And that's fantastic. And that's not this. This is absolutely work. So good point. Things that I will say about that, it's not really that many hours, and you kind of hinted at this when you just said mental load. Yeah. It's not that many hours. I don't go to these properties when there's a repair that needs to be made. The only time I go to these properties is when a tenant is moving out and new tenants are trying to be found, and we're doing some showings. Other than that, there's not a lot of I have to go do this thing, but there's stress. And part of that's my nature. I am a easily stressed person. I'm given to anxiousness. So maybe this wouldn't be as true for you if that's not you, but it's going to be true for everybody to some extent. Like, you're thinking about how old that roof is and how many years it's going to last and when you're going to have to replace it. You're thinking about how long that house that was beautiful when you bought it is going to look beautiful and when the next remodel is going to be needed. You're thinking about a tenant's lease who's running out in a month and a half and whether or not you want to keep them as a tenant or you want to try to get a different tenant, if you should raise the rent, how much you should raise. It's just a lot of thinking, a lot of strategizing. So you're not really putting in that many hours going and doing stuff, but the brain space that you're using thinking about all of this stuff is significant. That's where I found the work.
Yeah, and as someone married to you, it is like something that we talk about frequently of like, okay, there's this big decision to be made.
I know, I'm always bringing these problems to you and having you think through them with me.
Yes, which is good. And that's something too for those of you who are like, oh, I want to invest in real estate, or maybe you are already doing this and you're wanting to do it more. I said this at the beginning of this episode. I think it's an awesome family business, like a great thing to do with your spouse. Get your kids involved too if they're old enough to be involved in some little ways even. But even if it is a family business, it's going to be natural that one of you does more than the other one. And we talked about that on our first series that we did about real estate investing, which again, that's 135, 36, and 37 in this podcast. But I think it's good that's that way, because if y'all are both saying like we're both carrying everything equally, then y'all are just going to be doubling the work for no reason. So for us, Adam is the one doing all of this, and I'm a sounding board and definitely in with him on any big decisions because it's both of our business.
You're involved in the strategy.
Yeah, and you should not have the strategy just be on one person when it's both of your business. That's like not, I would say not healthy for a marriage or a business. Like if you made a really bad decision, it's like, oh, well, now it's all Adam's fault. Like we don't want those. We want to both be responsible for the decisions being made. But yeah, you've had a lot of, especially this year, a lot of mental load with it, and some different times where it's just been stressful. Like we already said, we added a lot to our year in 2022. It was our first full year as parents. Adam also is working as well outside of this job and in grad school. So it's like you have a lot going on. And we did not, you guys who are regular podcast listeners know this, we didn't have childcare for Colin. We split it between us two for basically his whole first year of life, which a lot of that was in the year of 2022. So being parents, being grad school, you being a counselor, and doing this, it's a lot.
Yeah, it was a busy year. Yeah, that was all really good. I know we're about to probably be out of time, but you just triggered a couple more thoughts in me. One, yes, the whole like you want everybody to be involved in the decision. I've never talked about this really with anyone except for you, Elizabeth, but internally, one of the like principles that I have in my mind for like marriage is win together, lose together. Like that, you've heard me use that phrase before. Yeah. Like I believe deeply in that principle when it comes to marriage. And what I mean by that is like both being involved in everything, not to equal degrees. Like it's okay for someone to be the lead person in one area and for the other person to be more like second chair in that area. Like division of labor is still a reality that has to happen, but as much as you can, trying to break down the intense division of labor and having everybody involved in everything to some extent. I mean, I'll tell you how that plays out in our life. Like Elizabeth makes most of our money, but she's not the only one who's responsible for working. Like I've been in grad school for the last 3 years because I'm trying to go out there and get a job and be a part of the process of providing money for our family. Flip side is true with our son and any subsequent children. Like we are trying to strike a balance where both of us are very involved in the day-to-day caregiving for our kid, not just one person doing all of that and the other person doing none of that. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? We both want to be involved in all these things. But one reason too is if one person is the only person who's responsible for, in this case, like Elizabeth was saying, the real estate business, well, if that goes bad, it's just on that person. And if it goes well, guess what? It's also on that person. So it can kind of put you in this lose alone, win alone kind of life, which is not my vision for marriage. Like it's supposed to be a team, right? Like we're trying to do things together, whether those things go well or go poorly. And real estate is a place where we get to work together. Like I don't really work in Elizabeth's business at all. She obviously doesn't work in my work as a therapist at all. Like those are places where we can't be partners and be involved. But this one is. Like this is a work endeavor where we can have some partnership, which is a really cool thing.
Yeah, very cool and a fun thing to have as part of your marriage. Gives you something interesting to talk about and strategize on together and set goals together on, all of that. And I think for both of us, if you had told us when we first got married that we would have real estate properties, like, I don't know, I feel like I would believe that because we've always been interested in managing money well. Somewhat early in marriage, we were interested in investing in real estate, but I would not believe that right now we would have this many properties and this be a thing for us. So that's really cool and exciting. Because neither of us come from that being something we were taught to do, like real estate investing or anything like that. It's all self-taught stuff.
Totally. Yeah, it's been fun. Been fun doing it together. Are we out of time or can we say one more thing?
Let's say one more thing.
Well, we didn't talk about the other ways that you make money besides.
Yes, let's talk about that. Yeah, so.
All right, just to give a full, do you want to intro it?
Yeah. So what Adam is, this episode is very casual all over the place. I hope you guys have enjoyed this though. Let me actually say this first before you share this. Adam is not kidding when he said that this is like a team meeting. What'd you call it? The annual meeting?
An annual meeting.
Yeah, for the stakeholders, so to speak, because he really did share very openly the numbers with you guys for our business. So I hope that's helpful to you and that you use that as you think about investing in real estate. But yeah, Adam is about to share now how we said, cash in the door, as I call it, the paycheck, so to speak, was like $17,000, that we saw money come in after the expenses, but that's not the only thing to consider, the only factor in real estate. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, if you are a person who's considering ever trying to do this, just want you to have the full picture. There are other ways you're making money. I mean, the $17,000 in profit is good, and the return, what do we say, 10.1 is good. But that's not the only way you're making money. So just to quickly recap, other ways. Loan repayment, so also called amortization, but every time you make a mortgage payment on all of these properties, some of that money, a lot of that money, early in the mortgage is going to interest. That's the bank's profit. But significant portions of it are also going to principal. And that's profit. That is now lowering the outstanding balance on the loan that you owe to the bank, which the longer that you do that, keep making these mortgage payments, keep lowering it, that's just making your paycheck at the point of sale bigger. Right? If you have a $150,000 loan and then you pay it down to a $130,000 loan, then you sell the property, that's $20,000 more you get paid. It's delayed, it's deferred, but it's every bit as real. Does that make sense? So on these three properties, if you add up the portions of the mortgage payments that are going towards the principal, it equals $750. It's basically $250 of each one of the mortgage payments is going towards the principal. Some are a little higher, some are a little lower. But three taken together, it is an additional $750 every month of the debt getting paid down. So there's another hidden $750 that you're making every month. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then there's obviously the appreciation, which is less predictable than the first two. You can't pencil that out like you can with the cash-on-cash return or the loan repayment. But it's every bit as real. We bought these properties while there was still quite a bit of room to run before the peak of the housing market came, which we're now past the peak, if you've been following. It's coming down, still going down. Don't know how low it's going to go, but it's come down quite a bit. We've seen a significant portion of the correction in housing prices. And even with that having been true, if we sold all three of these properties today at the estimated value of what I think they could sell for today, and I'm a pretty conservative estimator. Let me tell you, the numbers that I'm estimating we would sell these for, they're not too high. If anything, I guess too low because I'm a very conservative person. But estimating what we could sell all three for today, if you just liquidated all of it, we would walk away with an additional $108,000 of profit. That's over and above the initial investment. So you'd walk away with more cash than that. What I'm saying is we would walk away with $108,000 more than the initial money that we put as down payments. And that's even after, quite a bit of a correction has happened. So I share that to illustrate the cash on cash, profit in the door, money in the door, whatever your term was, Elizabeth. Yeah, that's important to look at, but don't forget there's all these other ways that money is made in real estate. And
to note again, we haven't had these properties very long. So we're not saying that number with we've had these properties 10 years, and so that's why it's built up that much. It's been not that long of a thing for us that we've been doing this. So
Right, which there's a lot to say about that. Of, someone listening might say, yeah, but you got lucky. You happened to buy when there was, the next 6 or 12 months was going to be a really, really great time for price appreciation. True, fair point, but the prices have also been coming down, and they're probably going to keep going down. So more opportunistic times to buy may be coming, and this is something we don't have to really talk about a lot on these 3 episodes because it's more like high-level macroeconomics, but we still don't have enough houses in America. Like, there's still a housing shortage. Like, the reason prices are going down is because the Federal Reserve has decided they're going to come down. Like, that's a intentional decision on their part. They are forcing the prices down, just like they're forcing the price of everything down through high interest rates. But there's still not enough houses in America, and we're still not building enough houses. So there's still lots of great reasons to believe that if you have a 5 and 10 plus year horizon, there's still a lot of price increase coming.
Yeah. And you just, that's very well said. You also, though, to add to that, you can't just sit around waiting for the market to be just right. This is true of everything in life and in business. So you can't just sit around waiting for the circumstances to be completely perfect for you to decide to start your business or to invest in real estate, any of this sort of stuff, because it's always changing. I think we shared this literally on over a year ago on those episodes we did. But when we bought our house, we were told to wait because, and this was our first house, not the house we're living in now, but to wait because the market was gonna go down, or do you remember that? What was the?
Yeah,
and we didn't. We just bought when we did, but it was you just can't sit around waiting because everything is just people guessing and you just don't really know.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We bought the previous house that we lived in, we bought in early 2019, and there were plenty of people at that point, because we live in Nashville. It had already seen a lot of price increase over the previous decade, hot housing market, all that kind of stuff. And there were plenty of people who were our friends, our peers, who were kind of saying that whole we're going to sit on the sidelines. We think the price is going to come down at some point. Or older mentor figures, advising a similar thing. Yeah, thank God we didn't do that. Would have been a huge mistake. I mean, prices have done nothing but skyrocket since then. Yeah. So I'm trying to think if there's a way to sum up that big point. You got to say yes at some point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you... the one way to guarantee that you never make any money is to never do anything. You're going to have to say yes to something at some point that will entail some risk, but it's not as much risk as the guaranteed risk of doing nothing, which will result in a zero return.
Well said. Well said. Okay, I feel like we can wrap it up on that, right?
Cool.
Yeah, okay. And guys, too, I want to say, first off, I have 2 things to say to close this out, so don't turn me off yet. If you are the one in your relationship that's hey, I really want to invest in real estate, get your spouse to listen to this one. They might be hey, wait, this seems like an online business podcast. Hey, maybe be no, this episode's about real estate. It's a husband-wife team talking about this. You're going to enjoy what they're saying. So share this with your spouse. Get them having some ideas about this with you. And then second thing is the next episode. So next week, we are talking about continuing this conversation. We just updated you on everything. And now we're going to share the episode title. It's 5 Properties Later, What I Wish I Knew Then That I Know Now. And Adam and I are going to walk through 7 different things that we have learned through these 5 properties that we wish we had known on day 1 that I think will be really helpful to you. So come back for that. And then also if you want to go back and listen to those original 3 episodes we did, those were Q&A style and they were really good, I think, answering questions you guys literally sent me on Instagram about with just the nitty gritty stuff of investing in real estate and getting started. And those are 135, 136, and 137 on the Breakthrough Brand podcast. So that's it. Thanks for being my first guest of 2023.
Yeah, I was glad to be here, and we're going to record 2 more, probably right now. So...
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast today and for staying until the end. I appreciate you being here. And if you enjoyed this episode, then I want to invite you to check out my online course and coaching program for designers, Booked Out Designer. In this program, I teach you how to build a successful in-demand booked out business as a designer. You'll learn everything from the exact experience I take my clients through to things like figuring out your niche, mastering discovery calls, pricing your services for profit, creating contracts that will not cause you legal troubles, and my exact social media strategies to book clients. You even get to watch recordings of me in actual meetings with my actual clients so you can really learn through what you're seeing. We take things you're learning on this podcast and so many topics I never even cover on this show and deep dive into them. So in addition to the amazing course, the course is 9 modules of teaching with over 90 lessons. You get group coaching calls with me and access to an exclusive Facebook community of designers just like you. And fun fact, this isn't one of those kind of Facebook groups where the founder never comments on posts or you never see them in there. You'll find me there all the time, ready to help you out with any business question you have. So to get info on the course and to see when the doors will be opening again, head to elizabethmccravey.com/BOD, short for booked out designer. I hope to be able to coach you and teach you inside of the course soon. And don't forget that you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. And a great way to support the show is to leave a rating and review, share it with a friend, share it on social media. All of that will help get the word out. All right, I'll see you again next week.